Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's dive into today's story. The CEO who bought a bakery just to taste her cupcakes again. What happens when a successful but lonely CEO buys a bakery just to relive a memory of a woman he once met? He has everything, but will he find love where he least expects it? Stay tuned to find out. The evening air in Manhattan was crisp, with the lights of the city sparkling like a blanket of stars. Liam Parker stood at the top of his office building, gazing out at the skyline. He had everything a man could want: wealth, power, and success. His company, Parker Enterprises, was one of the most successful tech firms in the world. Yet, in all his achievements, something felt missing. He had all the money in the world, but no one to share it with. No one to care about. His thoughts drifted back to a simpler time, to a moment that had caught him by surprise. It was years ago, when he was just another man struggling with loneliness. He had walked into a small bakery on the corner of 12th Street, drawn in by the smell of fresh pastries. The woman behind the counter, with her warm smile and gentle eyes, had handed him a cupcake that he still remembered. The taste, sweet yet rich, had taken him back to a time when life felt more meaningful, more real. Her name was Emma, and for just that brief moment, he had felt a spark of connection. But life moved on, and he never saw her again. The memory of that cupcake had stayed with him for years, a reminder of something he had lost, something he wasn't even sure he had ever fully understood. Now, standing in his penthouse, Liam had made a decision. He could not stop thinking about those cupcakes, about Emma, and about the feeling they gave him. It was foolish, but it was real. He picked up his phone and made a call. "I want to buy the bakery," he said to his assistant. "I don't care about the price. Just get it done." His voice was firm, no room for debate. He couldn't explain it. It wasn't just about the bakery or the cupcakes. It was about something he couldn't put into words. The need to reconnect with the simplicity and warmth of that moment, even if it meant buying a bakery. He wasn't sure what he expected, but he knew he had to do it. Emma stood behind the counter, wiping her hands on her apron, looking around the bakery she had poured her heart into. She had inherited it from her grandmother, and though it had been a struggle to keep it running, it was her pride and joy. The shelves were lined with cupcakes, each one a small masterpiece. She had no idea who had purchased her bakery, but the notification came through her phone. "The sale has been finalized," it said. The bakery was no longer hers. She wasn't surprised. The bakery had been in financial trouble for months, and she had been barely holding it together. She just couldn't afford to keep up with the rising costs of ingredients and rent. Still, it stung. It wasn't just a business to her. It was her life, her connection to her family and the past. "I'll figure it out," she whispered to herself. She could always start over. She always had to. Days later, Emma walked into the bakery, expecting a new owner or a corporate chain to be running things. But when she saw the man standing behind the counter, she froze. It was him, Liam Parker, the same man who had walked into her bakery years ago and asked for a cupcake. He looked different now, more polished, more confident, but his eyes were still the same. It felt like a lifetime ago, but that connection, however brief, was still there. "Emma." Liam's voice was tentative, like he wasn't sure if she would remember him. She blinked, unsure if she was dreaming. "You remember me?" he asked again. Emma nodded slowly, still in shock. "I never forgot that cupcake," he said, his voice soft but full of meaning. "And I never forgot you." It had been 3 days since the bakery had been sold, and Emma was still trying to come to terms with the fact that she no longer owned the place she had poured her heart into. She had worked tirelessly for years to keep it running, but in the end, the numbers didn't add up. The bills piled up, and the dream she once had of expanding her business seemed further and further out of reach. Despite the heartbreak, she tried to focus on the positives. At least the bakery was still open, and maybe, just maybe, the new owner would bring in fresh energy. She had no idea who the buyer was yet, but the rumors circulating in the small community suggested it was someone with deep pockets. It wasn't the first time a wealthy investor had shown interest in buying her out, but this time felt different. That morning, Emma arrived early. As usual, to start the day's baking. She moved through the motions, mixing, stirring, and frosting cupcakes, trying to keep her mind off everything that had happened. The hum of the oven was a comforting sound, and the sweet smell of fresh cupcakes began to fill the air. It was the one thing that still brought her peace. She paused for a moment to admire the perfect rows of cupcakes sitting on the counter, and as she did, she heard the chime of the doorbell. She looked up and froze. There, standing in the doorway, was Liam, the man who had bought her bakery. The man who had once walked into her life and left a lasting impression, though she had never thought she would see him again. He looked just as sharp as she remembered, tailored suit, perfectly combed hair, and that same intense gaze that made her heart skip a beat. Emma's breath caught in her throat, and for a second, she wasn't sure whether to smile or turn away. "Liam," she said, her voice soft, almost in disbelief. "I didn't expect you to come by so soon." She wiped her hands on her apron, her heart racing. He stepped inside, his gaze scanning the familiar surroundings, his eyes lingering on the cupcake display. "I know," Liam replied, his tone warm yet slightly hesitant. "I've been busy with the paperwork, but I wanted to see you again. I couldn't stay away from this place." His gaze met hers, and for a moment, it felt like they were the only two people in the room. Emma didn't know what to say. She had expected to see him at some point, but the reality of it made her nervous. She was still processing the idea that he now owned the bakery, the very place she had dreamed of expanding. "I never thought I'd see you again, especially not under these circumstances," Emma said, forcing a smile. "How's everything going with the purchase?" "Everything legal and good to go." She tried to keep the conversation light, but deep down, she felt a mix of emotions: anger, confusion, and something she couldn't quite place. Was it regret? Or maybe it was hope? Liam smiled faintly, taking a step closer to the counter. "It's all settled. But, Emma, I didn't just buy this place for the business." He paused for a moment, then continued, his voice dropping a little, as though he was sharing something personal. "I bought it because I couldn't forget this bakery, or the woman who made the best cupcakes I've ever tasted. I bought it because I wanted to taste those cupcakes again. And because I wanted to see you again." His words hung in the air, and Emma felt her heart race. The last part of his sentence, especially, sent a wave of warmth through her chest. Emma blinked, taken aback by his honesty. She hadn't expected him to say anything like that. I don't know what to say," she murmured. "I didn't even know you remembered me." She looked away, trying to hide the emotions that were starting to surface. She wasn't sure what to make of his confession. Was this some kind of joke? Or was it real? Liam seemed to sense her hesitation, and he stepped back, giving her space. "I get it, Emma," he said softly. "I probably seem like a fool, but I wanted to be honest with you. The moment I walked into this bakery all those years ago, something about it, and you, stayed with me. I've had everything I could ever want, but there's something missing, and I thought maybe I could find it here. Maybe with you." His voice was steady, but there was an underlying vulnerability in his words. For a long moment, Emma was silent. Her mind raced, trying to process everything he had just said. She wanted to be angry. She wanted to tell him that buying the bakery to chase a memory was selfish. But she also knew deep down that there was more to his story than she could see right now. She had spent years trying to hold on to a dream that seemed impossible, and here he was, someone with power and resources, admitting that he was searching for something too. Maybe she wasn't as alone as she thought. Finally, she spoke, her voice quieter now. "I don't know if you'll find what you're looking for, Liam. But I guess we'll see." She gave him a small, uncertain smile. "You're welcome to stay. But just so you know, I'm not planning to stay here forever." Liam nodded, understanding the unspoken boundaries she was setting. He didn't need to push her for answers. He had time, and he wasn't going anywhere. The two of them stood in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken words between them. Emma turned back to the counter, focusing on the task at hand. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something that would change her life, something she wasn't ready for but couldn't ignore. The next few days were a blur for Emma. The bakery, once her pride and joy, now felt different. Liam's presence seemed to linger, even when he wasn't around. He didn't push her for answers, but each time he came in, there was that same quiet determination in his eyes. He would sit at the corner table, sipping his coffee, watching her work, never saying much, but always there. And Emma couldn't help but notice how much he was trying, how much he cared, even in small ways. The bakery was seeing more customers than it had in months, and there was a new energy in the air. She could admit that, even if she didn't want to. She didn't want to need his help, but it was clear that he was making a difference. One afternoon, after the lunch rush had settled, Liam approached the counter, holding a small notebook in his hands. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice low and serious. "I've been watching you work, and I think there's something here, something more. What if we did something special, something to take this place to the next level? I know you've been struggling with finances, and I want to help." Emma raised an eyebrow, confused by the sudden offer. "What do you mean?" "You've already bought the bakery," Emma said, trying to keep the suspicion from her voice. "What more do you want from me?" Liam held up the notebook, revealing sketches of new designs for the bakery. "I'm not talking about just the business," he said, his eyes locking with hers. "I'm talking about the potential, the vision. I know we can make this place even better, and I want to help you get there. I'm not asking for anything in return, just to see you succeed." Emma felt her heart race. She wanted to refuse him, wanted to tell him that she didn't need his charity. But the truth was, the idea of expanding the bakery, of making it something bigger than it had ever been, was a dream she had given up on. And now, it was within reach. "Why are you doing this?" Emma asked, her voice softer now, betraying the doubt in her heart. Liam smiled, though it was a quiet, almost sad smile. "Because, Emma, I see something in you that I haven't seen in a long time. I see passion. I see someone who fights for what they believe in, and I want to be a part of that. I don't just want to be a man who buys a bakery. I want to be someone who helps make a difference in your life, even if it's just by making sure your cupcakes get the recognition they deserve." Emma's breath caught in her throat. She had never heard him speak this way, and it was clear that his words weren't just about business. There was something more here, something personal. She looked down at the counter, unsure of how to respond. For so long, she had done everything on her own, convinced that she didn't need anyone else. But now, standing in front of Liam, she wondered if maybe she had been wrong. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't meant to do it alone. She took a deep breath and finally spoke, her voice quiet but resolute. "I don't know if I can accept this," she said, her eyes meeting his. "But I'll think about it. I need time." Liam nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "Take all the time you need," he replied gently. "I'm not going anywhere." And with that, he left, leaving Emma standing behind the counter, her mind spinning with possibilities. That night, Emma sat in her small apartment, staring out the window at the city lights. She had always dreamed of something bigger, something beyond the small bakery that had become her entire world. But fear had always held her back. Fear of failure. Fear of losing everything she had worked for. She knew that if she accepted Liam's offer, everything would change. And that terrified her. But what if it was the change she needed? What if, with his help, she could finally make her dreams come true? The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. Emma sighed, running a hand through her hair. "What do I have to lose?" she whispered to herself. Maybe it was time to take a leap of faith. The next day, she walked into the bakery, feeling a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in a long time. Liam was already there, as usual, sitting in his corner with a cup of coffee, waiting. As soon as she stepped in, he stood up and smiled at her. "You're here," he said. Emma nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. "I've made my decision," she said, her voice steady. "I'll do it. Let's take this bakery to the next level. Together." Liam's eyes lit up with surprise and something else, something that made her feel like, for the first time in a long time, she wasn't alone. "You won't regret this," he said, his voice full of promise. And so, the two of them began their journey, not just as business partners, but as two people learning to trust each other, each day bringing them closer to their dreams and to something more. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of change for both Emma and Liam. With each passing day, the bakery transformed into something Emma had only dreamed of. New designs, new recipes, and even a fresh menu item that became an instant hit. Emma found herself working alongside Liam more than ever. She still couldn't believe how much he was invested in the success of the bakery, and in her. He wasn't just throwing money at her business. He was actively involved, learning everything he could about the art of baking. His attention to detail was incredible, and Emma couldn't help but admire his dedication. One afternoon, as the sun began to set, Liam and Emma were in the back of the bakery, discussing ideas for a special charity event. They had been working on it for weeks, brainstorming ways to give back to the community. We could hold a bake sale and donate all the proceeds to the children's hospital, Liam suggested, looking at Emma with a thoughtful expression. She nodded, already starting to form a plan in her head. That sounds perfect, she said, her voice full of excitement. We could even involve some of the local schools, get the kids to help decorate cupcakes. It would be great for the community, and it could get people talking about the bakery. Liam smiled, impressed by Emma's creativity. I love how you think. You always know how to make things work. I'm glad I decided to invest in this place, and in you. His words caught Emma off guard, and for a moment, she felt a wave of warmth spread through her chest. She had grown so used to being independent, to not needing anyone. But now, working with Liam, she was starting to realize that maybe she didn't have to do everything alone. Over the course of the event preparations, the two of them spent long hours together. They laughed, shared stories, and even discovered that they had more in common than they initially thought. Liam's sharp business sense complemented Emma's creativity, and together, they made the perfect team. But as they worked closely, Emma couldn't ignore the growing connection between them. It wasn't just business anymore. There was something more, something deeper that was slowly building between them. She tried to brush it off, telling herself that it was just the stress of the event and the long hours they were putting in. But every time their eyes met, she felt something stir inside her that she hadn't felt in a long time. One evening, after they had finished planning the event, Liam invited Emma to join him for dinner at a small restaurant across the street from the bakery. She was hesitant at first, unsure if it was a good idea to blur the line between work and personal life. But she agreed, thinking that they could both use a break. As they sat across from each other, sharing a quiet meal, Emma couldn't help but notice how different Liam seemed outside the bakery. The walls he had built around himself at work had melted away, and she saw the man he truly was, someone who cared deeply, not just about business, but about the people in his life. I know I've been pushing for this bakery to succeed, Liam said, looking at Emma with sincerity in his eyes. But I want you to know, it's not just about the business. It's about you. I'm here because I believe in you, Emma. I believe in what you're doing, and I believe in the person you are. Emma felt her heart skip a beat. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. She had always been used to taking care of herself, relying on no one but herself. But now, Liam was offering her something she didn't know she needed, a partnership. Not just in business, but in life. Emma took a deep breath, trying to keep her emotions in check. I don't know what to say, she admitted. I've never had someone believe in me like that. Liam reached across the table, taking her hand in his. You don't have to say anything, he said softly. I'm not asking for anything in return. I just want to be here for you. In any way you need me. Emma looked down at their hands, the warmth of his touch sending a ripple of emotion through her. She had always been so independent, so guarded. But now, with Liam, she felt the walls she had built around herself starting to crack. The dinner ended quietly, and as they walked back to the bakery, Emma couldn't help but think about everything that had happened. She had never imagined that a simple cupcake would lead her to this point. Working with Liam, sharing her dreams, and maybe even opening her heart to something more. She wasn't ready to admit it yet, but deep down, she knew that whatever this was between them, it was changing her. And she wasn't sure where it was going, but for the first time in a long time, she was ready to find out. The next morning, Emma arrived at the bakery early, her mind racing with everything that had been said. As she walked in, she saw Liam already at his usual spot, working on some plans for the event. He looked up and smiled when he saw her. Good morning, he said, his voice warm. Ready to make today amazing? Emma smiled back, feeling a spark of excitement. Absolutely, she said, walking over to join him. Today was another day of work, but this time, it felt different. This time, she was not only working for the future of the bakery, but for the future she and Liam were slowly building together. The day of the charity event arrived, and the bakery was buzzing with excitement. The place was packed with people, families, children, and volunteers, all eager to support the cause. Emma stood behind the counter, helping customers, while Liam moved through the crowd, making sure everything was running smoothly. The air was filled with laughter and the smell of freshly baked goods. Emma couldn't help but feel proud of what they had accomplished together. This was more than just a business now. It had become a community hub, a place where people gathered, shared, and gave back. It felt like a dream, one that she had almost given up on. And yet, here she was, surrounded by the success of something she had built with Liam's help. As the day wore on, the event began to take shape, with volunteers setting up booths and children decorating cupcakes with bright icing. It was heartwarming to see the bakery come to life in such a beautiful way, and Emma couldn't help but notice how different things were now. Liam was no longer just the business partner she had reluctantly accepted. He had become someone she trusted, someone who cared about more than just making money. He was genuinely invested in making the world a better place, and that was something she had never expected to find in someone like him. In the middle of the event, Liam pulled Emma aside, a smile on his face as he watched the children giggling over the cupcake decorating contest. "I think this is a success," he said, his voice full of pride. "You've done an amazing job, Emma." She blushed slightly, feeling the warmth of his praise. "We've done it together," she replied. "I couldn't have done it without you." Liam's smile softened, and for a moment, they both stood there, watching the event unfold. There was something about this moment that felt significant, like it was a turning point in both their lives. As the evening approached, the event began to wind down. The volunteers packed up, and the last few customers trickled out. Liam and Emma remained behind to close up for the night. Emma wiped down the counter, lost in thought, when Liam walked over to her, holding a small box in his hands. "I know this isn't much," he said, his voice a little quieter than usual, "but I wanted to give you something. As a thank you for everything you've done, for the bakery, and for me." Emma raised an eyebrow, curious. "What is it?" she asked, wiping her hands on her apron. Liam handed her the box, and Emma carefully opened it. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a small cupcake charm attached. "It's beautiful," she said softly, touched by the gesture. Liam smiled, looking at her with an intensity she hadn't seen before. "I've watched you work so hard, and I know how much this bakery means to you. I just wanted to remind you that you're not alone in this. We're in it together." Emma felt a lump form in her throat, the emotions of the day and his words crashing down on her all at once. She had never expected to find someone who truly understood her, who cared about her dreams as much as she did. And yet, here Liam was, standing in front of her, offering her not just a gift, but his heart. She smiled at him, her eyes a little misty. "Thank you, Liam. I don't know what to say." He stepped closer, taking her hand in his. "You don't have to say anything. I just want you to know that I'm here, for the bakery, for you, and for whatever comes next." Emma felt her heart race. She had fought so hard to keep her walls up, to stay independent, but Liam's words had pierced through every barrier she had built. She wanted to be strong, to stand on her own 2 feet, but in this moment, she realized that maybe it was okay to let someone in. The night ended with the two of them walking out of the bakery together, the soft glow of the streetlights casting a warm, golden hue over everything. As they walked side by side, Emma felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. She had found something more than success. She had found a partner, someone who cared about her and the future they were building together. It was a feeling she couldn't quite put into words, but she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't alone anymore. As they reached the corner of the street, Liam turned to her, a playful glint in his eyes. "So what's next for us?" he asked, his voice light. Emma laughed, her heart full. "Well, we've got a business to run, a community to help, and a lot more cupcakes to bake." She looked at him, her smile widening. "I think we're just getting started." And with that, they walked off into the night, hand in hand, ready for whatever the future held. Weeks passed, and the bakery continued to flourish under Emma and Liam's collaboration. The community loved the new additions to the menu. The charity events became a monthly tradition, and the business was thriving. Despite their success, Emma couldn't shake the growing feeling she had for Liam. It was hard to ignore the bond they had formed over the past few months. She had always kept her heart guarded, but Liam made her want to believe in the possibility of love again. He was kind, thoughtful, and patient, everything she had ever hoped for, even if she hadn't realized it until now. One afternoon, after a busy morning of baking, Emma found herself sitting in the back office, staring out the window at the bustling street outside. Liam walked in, a cup of coffee in hand, and smiled when he saw her. "You look like you need a break," he said, setting the cup down in front of her. She smiled back, taking a sip. "I do, actually. It's been nonstop lately." Liam sat down across from her, his gaze soft and understanding. We've been working hard, but I think you've earned some time for yourself. Emma looked up at him, her heart fluttering slightly at his words. She didn't want to admit it, but she realized how much she had come to rely on him, not just as a business partner, but as someone who genuinely cared for her. I appreciate everything you've done for me, Emma said, her voice a little softer now. I didn't expect any of this to happen. I didn't expect you to care so much. Liam's smile deepened, and he reached across the table, gently taking her hand. I care about you more than you know, Emma, he said quietly. And I always will. For a moment, neither of them spoke, but the silence between them was comfortable, filled with an unspoken understanding. Emma felt the warmth of his hand in hers, and for the first time in a long while, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The days that followed were filled with more quiet moments like that one. Simple, meaningful exchanges that spoke volumes about how far they had come. Emma couldn't help but smile every time Liam walked into the bakery. It wasn't just the way he helped with the business, or how he listened when she shared her ideas. It was the way he made her feel safe, valued, and seen. He had become someone she could trust, someone she could imagine a future with, and it terrified her. She had been so independent for so long, and now she was faced with the possibility of letting someone into her life in a way she hadn't allowed in years. One evening, after closing up for the night, Liam and Emma stood in front of the bakery, looking out at the city lights. It's incredible, isn't it? Emma said, her voice full of awe. We've really built something special here. Liam nodded, his hand brushing against hers. We have, he agreed, his voice warm. And I think we're just getting started. There's so much more we can do. Emma turned to face him, her heart racing. She wanted to tell him how much he meant to her, how much she had come to rely on him, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she simply nodded, a smile playing at the corners of her lips. Liam, she began, her voice steady but soft. There's something I've been meaning to say. I didn't expect to get close to anyone, especially not like this. But I care about you. I care about this business, and I care about what we're building together. More than I've ever allowed myself to care about anything. Liam's eyes softened as he listened to her words, and he stepped closer, taking her hand in both of his. Emma, he said, his voice full of emotion. I've felt the same way for a long time. I didn't just buy this bakery for the business. I did it because of you. And now, I can't imagine my life without you in it. His words were like a balm to her heart, soothing the fear and doubt that had lingered for so long. Emma looked up at him, her eyes meeting his. Are you saying what I think you're saying? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam smiled softly, his hand gently cupping her cheek. I'm saying that I love you, Emma. I've loved you for a while now. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, Emma couldn't speak. She had heard those words before, but never with so much sincerity, never from someone who truly meant them. Slowly, a smile spread across her face, and she stepped forward, closing the distance between them. I love you too, Liam, she said softly. And in that moment, everything fell into place. The future was no longer something she feared. It was something she looked forward to, because she knew she wouldn't be facing it alone. The two of them stood there for a long moment, their hands intertwined, the city lights shimmering around them. The bakery had brought them together, and now it felt like the beginning of a new chapter in both their lives, a chapter they would write together. And as they walked back into the warmth of the bakery, Emma couldn't help but feel that, with Liam by her side, she had everything she had ever dreamed of. The days following their confession were filled with a new sense of excitement and possibility. Emma and Liam continued to work side by side in the bakery, but now there was a deeper connection between them, something unspoken but understood. Their partnership, both in business and in life, had become a force that drove them forward. The bakery was thriving more than ever, and Emma couldn't help but feel a sense of pride every time she saw the smile on Liam's face when they talked about the future. They had started with a dream, and now they were building something real, together. But as the weeks passed, Emma began to notice something. Liam, who had once seemed so confident and unwavering, was starting to show signs of stress. She noticed the way he would sometimes pause during their conversations, his eyes drifting off, lost in thought. It wasn't just the bakery. There was something else weighing on him, and Emma couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't being completely open with her. She had learned to trust him, but now, the uncertainty she had once felt about their relationship was creeping back. One evening, after they had closed up the bakery, Emma found Liam sitting in the back office, his hands resting on the table, his gaze focused on something that wasn't there. She approached him quietly, her heart heavy with concern. "Liam," she said softly, her voice breaking the silence. "What's going on? You've been distant lately, and I can feel something's off." Liam looked up at her, his expression unreadable for a moment, before he sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "I didn't want to worry you," he began, his voice quiet. "But there's something I've been dealing with. It's not about the bakery or us, it's about my past." Emma frowned, confused. "Your past?" she asked, sitting down next to him. "What do you mean?" Liam hesitated for a moment, then finally spoke, his voice heavy with the weight of his words. "Before I bought the bakery, I was dealing with a lot of business pressures, some financial struggles in my other ventures. I've been trying to fix everything on my own, but lately, it's been catching up with me. I haven't been as transparent with you as I should have been." Emma's heart sank as she listened. She had no idea Liam was carrying so much on his shoulders. She had always seen him as a strong, capable man, but now she realized that even someone like him could be struggling. She reached out, placing a hand on his. "You don't have to carry all of this by yourself, Liam," she said gently. "We're in this together. Whatever it is, we can face it together." Liam looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. "I know. I just didn't want to bring any of this into our lives, especially now. You've already given so much to the bakery, to me. I didn't want to burden you with my problems." Emma shook her head, her voice firm. "Liam, we've been through too much together for you to keep things from me. We've built something beautiful here, and we can handle anything that comes our way. You're not alone." There was a long silence between them, but this time, it wasn't awkward. It was comforting. Liam took a deep breath, then nodded. "Thank you, Emma," he said quietly, his voice full of emotion. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Emma smiled softly, squeezing his hand. "You'll never have to find out," she said, her voice full of promise. "We're in this for the long haul." The next few days were filled with hard work, but Emma noticed a change in Liam. He was still carrying the weight of his financial struggles, but now he was more open with her about it, and together, they began to make a plan to address the issues. Emma could see that, despite everything, Liam was determined to make things right, not just for the bakery, but for their future. As they sat together, making plans for the next steps, Emma felt a renewed sense of hope. They had faced challenges before, and they would face many more. But now, she knew that with Liam by her side, they could overcome anything. They had built something incredible, and no matter what the future held, she was ready to take it on with him. After all, they had already proven that love and partnership could conquer even the toughest obstacles. Weeks passed, and the bakery continued to grow, just as their relationship did. Emma and Liam found themselves working more closely than ever, with each day bringing them closer to their dreams. Despite the challenges Liam had faced with his past financial struggles, they had come up with a plan, and things were slowly but surely improving. The charity events continued to bring in new customers, and the bakery's reputation was spreading. Emma had never felt prouder of what they had created, and she realized, more than ever, that she had found a partner not just in business, but in life. One evening, as the sun began to set and the bakery began to quiet down, Emma sat in the back office, flipping through some new recipe ideas for the coming months. She heard the door chime, signaling that someone had entered the bakery, and looked up to see Liam standing in the doorway. He was holding a small bouquet of flowers, a smile on his face. "For you," he said, walking toward her and handing her the flowers. Emma blinked in surprise, not expecting such a sweet gesture. "Liam, these are beautiful," she said softly, touched by the gesture. He shrugged, his smile never fading. "I just thought you deserved them. You've worked so hard, and I know you've been under a lot of stress lately." He reached out, gently, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "You're amazing, Emma. I just wanted to remind you of that." Emma felt her heart swell with emotion. It had been a while since she had allowed herself to accept such kindness, but Liam made it feel so easy, so natural. She looked up at him, her eyes soft. "I don't know what I'd do without you," she admitted. Liam's expression softened, and he took a step closer to her, his hand finding hers. "You'll never have to find out," he replied, his voice sincere. "We're in this together, remember?" Emma nodded, the weight of his words settling deep inside her. This wasn't just a business partnership. This wasn't just about cupcakes or charity events. It was about them, about building something real and lasting, no matter the obstacles they faced. Later that evening, after they had closed up the bakery for the night, they found themselves sitting outside on the small patio, the cool night air wrapping around them. Emma rested her head on Liam's shoulder, feeling at peace in a way she hadn't felt in years. They sat in silence for a while, simply enjoying each other's company, the soft sound of the city surrounding them. Liam broke the silence, his voice low and serious. "I've been thinking a lot lately about everything we've been through," he said, his hand gently rubbing her arm. "And I realized something important. I don't just want to build this bakery with you. I want to build a future with you. Not just for business, but for life. I don't know where this road will take us, but I know I want to walk it with you." Emma's heart skipped a beat as she looked up at him, surprised by the depth of his words. She had known for a while that she cared for him, that she had fallen for him in ways she hadn't expected. But hearing him say those words, so openly, so sincerely, made her realize just how much he meant to her. She smiled softly, squeezing his hand. "I've been thinking the same thing," she admitted. "I never thought I could trust someone like this again. But you've shown me that love isn't just about what you get. It's about what you give. And I'm ready to give you everything I have, Liam." Liam's eyes softened, and for a moment there was nothing but the two of them, the bakery in the background, and the quiet promise of their shared future. As they sat there together, Emma felt a sense of peace that had eluded her for so long. The bakery had been the first step towards something bigger, something more meaningful than she had ever imagined. And now, with Liam by her side, she was ready for whatever came next. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew that together, they could face anything. They had built a business, yes, but more importantly, they had built a life together, a life filled with love, trust, and endless possibilities. The days turned into weeks, and the bakery continued to thrive. Emma and Liam worked side by side, their partnership growing stronger with each passing day. They had created something beautiful, not just in the bakery, but in their lives together. It wasn't just about cupcakes and business anymore. It was about love, trust, and the future they were building. The community had embraced them, and every time Emma saw a customer walk into the bakery with a smile, she felt a deep sense of pride. But it wasn't just the bakery that had blossomed. Her relationship with Liam had blossomed too. They were no longer just business partners. They were life partners. One sunny afternoon, after a successful event celebrating the bakery's anniversary, Emma found herself standing in front of the bakery, watching the people pass by, lost in thought. She had been thinking about everything. The challenges, the late nights, the laughter, the struggles. But most of all, she had been thinking about how far they had come. Just a few months ago, she had been uncertain about her future, unsure if she could trust anyone again. Now here she was, standing next to Liam, with a successful bakery and a life that felt full of possibilities. Liam walked up beside her, a slight smile on his face as he took in the view of the busy street. "You're thinking too much," he said playfully, nudging her gently with his elbow. "We should be celebrating, not overthinking." Emma laughed softly, her heart warm with affection for him. "I know," she said, looking up at him. "I'm just grateful. For everything. For you. For us." Liam smiled, his hand finding hers. "We've worked hard for this," he said, his voice full of pride. "But we're just getting started. There's so much more we can do." Emma squeezed his hand, feeling a sense of peace settle over her. She had never imagined this kind of future, but now, she couldn't picture anything else. Later that evening, as they walked back to their apartment, Liam stopped in front of the bakery, turning to Emma with a look of determination. "There's something I've been wanting to do," he said, his voice low and serious. Emma raised an eyebrow, curious. "What's that?" she asked. Liam reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "Emma," he said softly, his voice filled with emotion, "I've been thinking about how much we've built together, how much you've brought into my life, and I want to keep building with you. I want you to be a part of my life, not just in business, but in everything. Will you marry me?" Emma's heart skipped a beat as she looked at the small box in his hand. She hadn't expected this moment, but as soon as she saw the sincerity in Liam's eyes, she knew that this was the future she had been waiting for. For a moment, Emma couldn't speak. Her heart was racing, her mind overwhelmed with emotion. She had never thought she would find someone who would truly understand her, someone who would stand by her through everything. But here was Liam, standing in front of her, offering her a future filled with love and possibility. "Yes," she said finally, her voice trembling with happiness. "Yes, I will marry you." Liam's face lit up with a smile so bright, it took Emma's breath away. He pulled her into a tight embrace, and in that moment, everything felt perfect. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, the world around them faded away. It wasn't just the bakery that had been built. It was a life, a future, a love that was stronger than anything either of them had ever imagined. They had faced challenges, they had worked hard, but most importantly, they had found each other. And in that moment, Emma knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together. Their love, their business, their life, everything had come full circle. And this was only the beginning. The next chapter of their lives had begun, and it was filled with promise, hope, and a love that was stronger than ever.